and we're at chapter 3, Narnia Reborn. Welcome back. I'm Rosie Boom and I'm reading to you from Where Lions Roar at Night, the first book in the Barn Chronicles by Rosie Boom. And we're at chapter 3, Narnia Reborn. Dad was right. When Millie woke up and looked outside, the sun was shining and the grass glowed emerald green and sparkled with millions of tiny diamonds. She woke the boys. "Come on, you two. Let's not waste the day." By the time Mum called them for breakfast, they had already checked out half the trees on the land and discovered a few great tree hut sites. The smell of bacon and eggs set them running. "Eat up well, team," said Dad. "We've got lots to do today. I think we should start by clearing some of the wood lying around the place. And of course, we need to get the water sorted." The kids all looked at each other. Firewood. If there was anything Dad was crazy about, it was collecting firewood. And there was going to be an endless supply of that here. Huge macrocarpa trees had been felled in a number of places on the land, and there were massive piles of branches and logs lying everywhere. It was a mess. That meant lots of work ahead for them. Dad clapped his hands. "Waste not, want not, eh? When we get our homeward stove in, we'll have plenty of firewood for it. And Mum will be able to cook up all sorts of delights, won't you, Mum?" They piled the breakfast dishes into a bucket, ready to take up to Grandma and Grandpa's later. G&G, as the grandchildren called them, lived in a cottage on Uncle Dave and Auntie Penny's farm. Until Dad got the barn sorted out, they were going to have their showers and do the dishes up there. "By the way," said Mum as she put on her gumboots, "last night Dad and I decided to go for a romantic moonlit walk on our own land. We walked across the front paddock towards the large kahikatea tree. It has the most amazing roots that sit high above the ground like armchairs. We'd just arrived there when suddenly some shapes rose up from the grass, glowing white in the moonlight, and began to run away. I got a real fright. You'll never guess what they were." The children looked at Mum and shrugged. "Indian runner ducks," declared Mum. "3 of them. They looked so strange, waddling off like 3 ghosts in the moonlight, their necks high in the air." Millie remembered the movie Babe and the duck that thought it was a rooster. "I'm sure that was an Indian runner duck," she thought. "Perhaps I'll be able to have some ducks as well." They all set off for the meadow. It was a large flat piece of land that stretched down to the river. A tall, ancient pear tree stood at the edge of the meadow, just out from the native trees that grew all along the riverbank. It still bore fruit, even though it was 90 years old. Dad parked the jeep and trailer in the middle of the meadow and took off 2 wheelbarrows. "If you work together and walk in a straight line across the meadow, you'll clear it systematically. I'll start chainsawing the logs up, ready for splitting." "Pick up sticks," said Mum. "If we all come out and do this for half an hour a day, we'll have it cleaned up in no time." "It'll take forever," wailed Millie, looking at all the wood littering the meadow. Mum grinned. "No, it won't, Millie. And just think, this wood is the reason why we got the land. Lee said that all the other potential buyers were put off by the huge mess." "I wonder why," muttered Josiah. Dad ignored the comment. "But it's not a problem for the Booms, eh? A triple blessing for us, the wood, the land, and the exercise." 2 hours later, a small section of the meadow was cleared of wood, and they had a good-sized stack of firewood piled neatly against the barn wall. "Now, isn't that a lovely sight?" exclaimed Dad. "Well done, team." 16-year-old Kate set out fresh bread and cheese and fruit on the picnic tables. They were all hungry. "Oh, nothing like good, honest work to give you an appetite," said Dad. "Now, after lunch, we're going to have to get the water tank cleaned out so we can start filling it with clean water. It's got about a foot of sludge in the bottom of it. You boys can help me, and maybe you girls can help Mum carry on unpacking." Millie groaned. "How come we get the boring jobs?" Dad laughed and ruffled her hair. "Fine, if you want to help as well, you can." They gathered a few buckets, a spade and a rope. "Right," said Dad. "I'll climb into the tank and you lower the buckets down to me. I'll tell you when to pull them up. You can tip the sludge out in the paddock over there." He climbed up the ladder and lowered his feet into the hole. "Darn," he muttered. "I'm stuck." Millie giggled. "Suck your tummy in, Dad." But there was no way Dad could fit through the hole. "You have a try, Joe," he said. "There's no way I'll fit either," said Joe, looking rather pleased. Millie was sure he was sticking his stomach out. Dad pulled himself out. "Right, it'll have to be one of you skinny ones. Who wants to do it?" "I will," cried Sam and Millie at the same time. Sam scooted up the ladder and peered into the hole. It looked dark and gloomy, and it didn't smell too good. He backed down the ladder. "You can do it, Millie, if you want to." "Fine," said Millie, and she ran off to get some gumboots. She found the longest ones she could amongst the jumble of pears on the porch. "Way to go, Millie," cheered Dad as she slipped through the hole and jumped in. Thick sludge slopped up the side of her gumboots and over the top. She felt it slime down her legs and squeeze between her toes. "Gross," she called up to the others. "The mud's gone into my boots." Jake giggled and Sam looked relieved. Dad peered down the hole. "It's deeper than it looks, eh? Never mind, we'll soon get it clean." He passed Millie the spade and then lowered the first bucket. Seconds later, she yelled, "Okay, pull it up." Josiah pulled a face at the sight of the sludge. "What a grotty job," he muttered as he tipped it out and passed it back down. It didn't take long. Millie worked fast and the team outside had to work hard to keep up with her. Soon they heard her shout, "It's finished." "Well done, Millie," cheered Dad. "How does it look?" "Filthy," came the answer from deep in the tank. "Do you think you could water blast it clean?" Millie hauled herself out of the tank and tipped the mud out of her boots. "Sure, if you teach me." After a quick lesson and a few tips from Mum, Dad decked out Millie with goggles and earmuffs and watched as she disappeared again into the tank with the water blaster. The rest of the family stood around and listened in amusement to the noises that came from inside the tank. Every now and then, Millie's shrieks and bursts of laughter could be heard above the squirting and pounding of the water against the tank walls. Then, silence. A few seconds later, a brown, mud-splattered face appeared through the hole of the tank. Millie was almost unrecognisable. Her hair fell matted and wet around her brown face, and mud dripped from her goggles and nose. She was grinning from ear to ear. "3 cheers for Millie," shouted Dad. The whole family clapped and whistled and cheered as Millie emerged from the tank and took a deep bow. "Off to the river with you," said Dad, and they all ran down to have a welcome swim. That night, As the family sat on the porch and ate dinner, Kate made an announcement. "I think we should call our place Narnia. I just went for a walk down by the river and saw the most amazing sight. The sun was setting as I looked between the two big gums by the river. You know, the place where the river turns in a big sweeping curve with that beautiful grassy area with all the native trees. The low sun lit up the glade with a golden, magical light. It looked like the entry into a different world with the two gums as the gateway. It made me think of Narnia." "I think that's a cool idea," said Ellie. "We could name all the different places of the land. What about Beaver's Bank?" "We'd need to have Cair Paravel," said Millie. "Maybe that could be the place near the bridge." And so it was that Narnia was reborn. The next day, Mum announced to the three youngest that she would teach them how to carve. Dad reminded her that she'd only ever carved one thing before, but Mum reminded him how well that one thing had turned out. They found some 6 by 2 inch macrocarpa and cut 4 lengths. Then Mum wrote the words on the wood in black felt pen. Sam found a couple of Dad's chisels and some hammers, and they began. All morning they chipped and chiselled. Samuel loved it so much that he did 2 signs, Lantern Waste and Narnia. Jacob and Mum did a joint effort on Beaver's Bank, and Millie carved Cair Paravel. "Very impressive," said Dad when they showed him. "All you need to do now is paint black inside the grooves and then oil the wood." As soon as they'd finished doing that, they carried the signs across the meadow and chose the trees. Lantern Waste was hammered into one of the great gums at the entrance to Kate's magical world. Jacob proudly hammered Beaver's Bank into a gnarled Tariri tree at the next turn of the river, where a huge totara log stretched from bank to bank. It looked just the place for Mr. and Mrs. Beaver to dwell. Millie examined several trees in the wooded glade near the bridge. Finally, she chose one that stood close to the riverbank and could be seen from the barn. When she nailed the sign up, it was visible from 3 different directions. "Perfect," said Mum. "Now I think we'll fix the Narnia sign on one of the totara trees right up near the barn at the start of our property." As they made their way back to the barn, Josiah said, "Do you realise that we hear Aslan roaring most nights?" Kate looked at him as if he'd gone crazy. "Well, sort of, anyway." He gave a small shrug. "The lion that acted as Aslan in the movie Narnia lives in the lion park just over the hills." Just then Jacob piped up. "Well, do you realise that even our cat has a Narnian name?" Mum stared at him for a second. "Why, Jacob, you're right.